You are listening to the audio production of Journey to Bethlehem, a treasury of classic Christmas devotionals by Leland Ryken, published by Audiobooks. This book was originally published by Crossway and is read by Robertson Dean. For Tom and Diane Martin. Part 1. Christmas Hymns. Every hymn begins its life as a poem. It becomes a hymn only when it is paired with music. Until the 1870s, hymn books were words-only books, 5 inches by 3 inches in size. They were essentially anthologies of devotional poems. Our experience of hymns is revolutionized when we see them printed as poems and interact with them as devotional poems. The first thing we see is that the text was composed on the principle of the line as the basic and recurrent unit of thought. The sentences do not run all the way to the right margin. If hymnic poems are composed on the principle of line construction, we need to read them that way. When we do, we immediately sense that the thought units are much briefer and more succinct than prose is. A second thing we note is that the flow of thought in a hymnic poem is packaged as a series of stanzas. We do not fully experience this until we see the stanzas before us in vertical sequence. The progression is not circular, as when we return to the same starting point in a hymn book, but sequential. Then, as we stare at the stanzas arranged in this way, we can identify the specific function of each stanza in the ongoing flow and in the overall superstructure. When these things are in view, we can take the next step to identify the unifying theme or big idea of the poem. Usually, the poet signals the unifying idea or motif of a poem in the first line or two. Once we train ourselves to identify the unifying core of a hymnic poem, we naturally start to think in terms of theme and variation, a formula borrowed from music. The individual stanzas are not self-contained units, but are building blocks in a coherent whole. The foregoing considerations have to do with the organization or structure of a poem. We need to balance that with the poetic texture, the individual details, such as images and figures of speech. It takes time to unpack the meanings of these details, and treating a hymn as a poem allows us to take the time that is required, instead of being forced to resort to the speed reading that singing necessarily imposes. The explications in this section include material that has been repurposed from my book 40 Favorite Hymns of the Christian Year, 2020, published by Presbyterian and Reformed Publishing Company. Acknowledgement is hereby gratefully recorded. Chapter 1. Joy to the World. Isaac Watts, 1674 to 1748. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing. Joy to the earth, the Saviour reigns. Let men their songs employ, while fields and floods, rocks, hills, and plains repeat the sounding joy. No more let sins and sorrows grow, nor thorns infest the ground. He comes to make his blessings flow far as the curse is found. He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness and wonders of his love. It is natural to begin the section of Christmas hymns with the hymn often chosen to begin a congregational Christmas service. It is doubly appropriate to begin with it because the author is none other than the person known to posterity as the father of English hymnody. Isaac Watts, 1674 to 1748, an educator and author of books on wide-ranging subjects, is regarded as a fountainhead figure in the history of hymnody because he is the one who freed hymn singing from the single-minded adherence to psalm paraphrases, also known as metrical psalms. Watts wrote some 750 hymns. The most obvious quality of Joy to the World is the tone of exuberance that breathes through it from start to finish. The opening word gets the excitement started with the accented word joy, and after that, everything is part of a grand celebration. The opening line states the unifying idea of the poem, namely, the coming of Christ to earth in the Incarnation and the joy that accompanies that coming. Everything that follows is an elaboration of this opening sentence.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?